Hello, third grade. This is part 11 of the Sisters Grimm. I'm going to record the rest of the book in 30-minute segments so that you guys can hear the whole book. Sabrina beamed with pride. Granny may have disapproved of Sabrina's suspicions about the ever-afters, but it was those same suspicions that were helping solve the mystery. "We won the lottery more than 10 years ago," Miss Muffet said. "So, we worked at the school. What does that have to do with the murder?" the Frog Prince asked. "It's your retirement that interests me. Let me explain. Witnesses say there have been attacks by two so-called monsters on school grounds," Granny said, crossing the room and stopping in front of the Frog Prince and Princess. "My family and I were victims of a third attack during our investigation. This one involved half-girl, half-frog creature. Luckily, no one was hurt." The couple lowered their eyes and Granny moved on to Muffet and her spider. "Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Mr. Grumpner. He was killed by what we suspect was a giant spider." The spider clicked angrily, but his wife was still. Granny moved on to Beauty and the Beast. Charlie, the school janitor, also met an untimely demise by a creature described as a hairy, man-eating beast with yellow eyes, Granny said. "You can't prove those are our children." "You're right. But there's one thing we can prove," the sheriff interjected. "None of you ever won the lottery." Everyone gasped, even Huck. "I called the state lottery commission," the sheriff continued. "They have records of every lottery winner in the last 100 years. None of you are on their list." "Where did you get the money?" Granny asked. "Are you suggesting we sold our children?" the beast growled. "I think you know I am," Granny answered. "And so am I," Hampstead added. He reached into his pocket and took out a pair of cuffs. "I also think you're going to be arrested unless someone starts talking." "We were nearly broke when I found out I was pregnant," the Frog Princess said. "All of our money was gone, and we were worried we'd lose our house. If you go broke in Fairyport Landing, you stay that way. There's no one to bail you out. You can't move to another town. We would have been beggars in the streets." Beauty broke down in tears as well. "We were in the same predicament, barely making ends meet on Beast's teacher's salary. There was no way to raise a child. He told us he could help. One night, he brought over a spinning wheel and started spinning gold. By morning, we had enough to last us a dozen lifetimes. We sold it to a precious metal merchant from New York City. We were rich overnight." "Who did this?" "Rumpelstiltskin," the Frog Prince cried. The Frog Prince took her hand and begged her to be silent, but the tears and truth were already pouring out of her. "We had to come up with an explanation for the money, so we invented the lottery story." "You sold your children?" Sabrina cried. She had never heard a more horrible story in her entire life. "How could you?" "He manipulated us. I know you don't understand, but when we gave him the babies, it was like we weren't in control of ourselves. We were so desperate, full of despair. It was like he crawled into our brain and rewired them, so we really believed it was the best thing we could do." "No, I don't understand," Sabrina shouted. "You filthy ever-afters are nothing but animals. You would hand your children over to a monster so you could cover yourself in jewels and fur?" Little Miss Muffet took looked down on her sparkling necklace and started to cry. Sabrina, Granny said, "That's enough." "I agree," Dolphine said. "Take a chill pill." Sabrina ignored them. "No wonder Wilhelm trapped you in this town. All of you belong in a cage." "Sabrina Grimm, you will hold your tongue this instant," Granny ordered. "You got yelled at," Puck said. "Puck, that goes for you as well." Sabrina was stunned. The woman had never raised her voice to her. The girl's face was hot with embarrassment. "If we showed you photos of all the children at the school, do you think you could pick out which ones might be yours in their human disguise?" the sheriff asked, picking up the Ferry Point Landing school elementary yearbook that was on his desk. "I don't think so, Ernest," Beauty said, trying to control her sobbing. "We haven't seen them since they were a day old. We didn't even get to name them." "Well, we will do our best. The best we can do to reunite you with them," Granny said. "You would do that for us?" the Beast asked. "Of course," Dolphine said. "We are Grimms, and this is what we do." "Do you need anything from me?" Hampstead asked. Granny shook her head, and flashed Sabrina an angry look. "Actually, can I have a police hat?" Dolphine asked the sheriff. Hampstead smiled and nodded at the girl. "You are so punk rock," she cried. Once the family was outside, Sabrina wasn't sure which was colder, the bitter winter air or Granny's attitude towards her. She also knew that Dolphine was going to give her the silent treatment again. But it didn't matter to her anymore. "I'm not sorry for what I said," she declared. "Well, oh, we're well aware of that," Granny said as they approached the car. Mr. Candace was waiting on the roof. "I heard yelling," he said, crawling down to help the old woman into the front seat. "I bet you're going to hear a lot more," Puck said, sounding hopeful. "Everything is fine," the old lady said. "It's late, and I think we all need a good night of rest." "Good idea," Dolphine said. "We can search the tunnels tomorrow." "No, I don't think so," Granny said as they settled in the car. "Things have escalated to a point where I don't feel comfortable having the three of you help out. A few ever-after children is one thing, but Rumpelstiltskin is another entirely. He may be behind these murders. He's one of the more deranged and mysterious fairy tale creatures that ever came to Fairy Point Landing. I can't put you in harm's way when I have no idea what to expect." "This isn't danger," Sabrina said, shaking with anger and hurt. "We've been in plenty of dangerous situations since we moved to this town. This is about me, isn't it?" Granny turned in her seat and eyed the girl. "In the past, I thought you two girls were smart enough to handle yourselves. I thought you might possibly be the cleverest Grimms in the history of the family. But right now, I don't trust your judgment. Sabrina, you're not who I thought you were, child. I'm sorry, but this case is closed for the Sisters Grimm." Everyone was furious with her, so Sabrina had crept upstairs to her room rather than hear another lecture. As she lay in bed looking up at the model airplanes her father had hung from the ceiling, she thought there might be an upside to being the black sheep of the family. While everyone was busy solving mysteries, she could spend more time searching for her parents. Just 2 days ago, she would have thought that was the perfect chance. But now, with Granny acting so blind to the truth about the town's residents, she worried the old woman would be their next victim. If that happened, the girls would get sent back to the orphanage, and any chance of finding their mom and dad would be gone. Dolphine entered the room, dressed in her pajamas, and sat down on the edge of the bed. "Well, We now know what Granny's like when she's mad, she said. She's downstairs cleaning the house. She's been dusting for the last hour. If you get her any madder, she's going to clean out the closets. I didn't mean to make her so angry, Sabrina said. You've got to get over this thing you have about ever-afters, Delphine said. Sabrina groaned. If Delphine was going to lecture her, she'd be happy to go back to receiving the silent treatment. No, what I've got to do is convince everyone to stop being so naive. But let's just say I'm wrong about everything. Punishing us for my attitude isn't going to help solve the case. Granny can't do it all, and she's not going to get any help from Charming and the sheriff. We could be searching the tunnels. Who knows how far they've dug, or even what they're digging for. Maybe there's some kind of monster under the town. I know that sounds nuts, but we used to think the same thing about giants not too long ago. What if the bad guys are doing something really bad down there while Granny is running around trying to find out which of the kids in school are monsters? So what do? We do what we're supposed to do, Sabrina says. We're Grimms, and something is wrong in this town. It is our job to find out what it is. Once she was confident her grandmother and Mr. Kane were asleep, Sabrina took her sister away, and the two of them crawled out of bed. They crept out of the room and down the hallway to Puck's bedroom. Please don't step on the plate, Sabrina reminded her sister as they opened the door. Inside the boys' magical forest room, the sun had set, replaced by a sea of stars, each blinking brightly just for Puck. The boxing kangaroo was asleep in his ring, and the roller coaster had been turned off. All was still, except for the cascading waterfall splashing into the lagoon. The girls crept along the path, around the lagoon, and then into some heavy brush. Eventually, they came to a trampoline on which Puck was sound asleep. The trickster king was wearing a pair of baby blue footy pajamas that had little smiling stars and moons on them. Held close to his face was a soft pink stuffed unicorn with a rainbow sewn on its side. If only Sabrina had brought a camera. She could have also recorded his thumb in his mouth. Time to wake up the sleepy monkey, Sabrina cooed in baby talk, doing her best not to roar with laughter. Delphine giggled, but held her hand over her mouth. Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey, Sabrina continued. Puck stirred in his sleep but didn't wake. A big stream of drool escaped his mouth and ran down the front of his pajamas. Does someone have the sleepy weepies? Delphine remembered her sister's baby talk. Time to come back from dreamland, precious, the older girl said, shaking the boy roughly. Puck sprang from his steps with wings extended on his back. He waved his big pink unicorn like a deadly sword and slashed at the children. Nice jammies, Delphine snickered. I especially like Mr. Unicorn, Sabrina laughed. His name is Craver the Deceiver, Puck corrected her, before realizing what he was holding and who was with him. He tossed the stuffed animal aside and fluttered down on the ground. We've got a plan for tomorrow, and you're going to have to help us. Forget it, the boy answered. Tomorrow, I'm telling the old lady to find another bodyguard for her stinking offspring. It's beneath me. But this plan requires a lot of mischief, Sabrina said. Puck's eyes lit up. I'm listening, he said. We're going to get into the boiler room tomorrow to search the tunnels. The old lady will be furious. I know, but I'm willing to take the heat if it saves somebody's life. Fine, what's the plan? Sabrina reached into her pocket and took out her set of keys. "Where did you get those?" Delphine asked. "I've been swiping them off Granny's ring one by one and making copies at the hardware store." Puck's eyes lit up. He looked at Sabrina as if he had never seen her before in his life. "You stole those keys and made copies?" She dropped her eyes. "Yeah," she said, thinking she felt disapproval. "That's wonderful," the boy said, eyeing the girl like a child watching a firework display. He was in complete awe of her. He grabbed both of the girls by the wrist and dragged them through his room. "Let's put them to good use." Once they were in Mirror's room, the three children stepped through the reflection and came out into the Hall of Wonders. Mirror was standing in front of his own full-length mirror, sucking in his plump belly and making muscle poses like a bodybuilder. "Doesn't anyone in this house sleep anymore?" he asked. "We need some help," Sabrina said. The little man rolled his eyes and let out his belly. "Very well. What's the scoop?" "We need something that will help us get into the boiler room at school. The door is locked, so we need something that will turn us invisible or let us walk through walls." "Children, this isn't Walmart. I don't have everything, but there is something that might help you. Follow me." They followed Mirror down the long hallway, Sabrina reading the gold plaques on each of the door, the favorite habit developed on previous visits. Leprechaun gold, floor plans for gingerbread houses, talking fish, ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, tick-tock men, Caliban. The doors went on. What was Mirror going to offer them? Soon they stopped at a door with a plaque that read, "The Pantry." He held out his hand and Sabrina gave him her key ring. He searched through her collection and found one that unlocked the door. Everyone stepped inside. Much to the girls' cringe, there stood an old, run-down refrigerator. "I've never heard of a magic refrigerator," Delphine said. "Is that a Grimm story or someone else?" "There's no such thing as a magic refrigerator," Mirror said as he opened the door. "It's what's inside that's important." He opened the fridge, bent down, and rummaged inside. He pulled out a bag of rotten carrots. "I really have to toss these out," he mumbled. He opened a carton of milk and took a sniff. His face crinkled up in disgust as he closed the carton and put it back in the refrigerator. Finally, he took out a package of juice boxes and handed them to the children. "Drink me," Delphine said. "This is from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. This will make us shrink to about the size of an ant," Mirror said. "At that size, you could walk under the door and get into any room you want. But you need these too." He reached in and pulled out several individually wrapped snack cakes. They looked just like the kind Sabrina used to buy at the deli near their Manhattan apartment. But the label said, "Eat me. These will make you big again, but don't eat too many. They're not exactly Atkins friendly." Tweedledee and Tweedledum sold these for a week at the convenience store before your grandmother confiscated their stock. The town was filled with giant children. It took us a week to sort it out. "We'll need 4 each, I think," Sabrina said. "But there's only 3 of us." I have a feeling the great detective, Wendell Hamlin, is going to change his mind about being a lawyer. The next day at school, the trio walked down the crowded hallway towards the boiler room. Sabrina scrutinized every kid along the way. Any one of them could be a giant spider or a frog girl, but beside being exhausted, They all looked just like the other kids Sabrina had ever seen. At least their suspicions about Wendell proved correct. He was waiting for them by the doorway, with a handkerchief and a runny nose. I've been doing some thinking, and I believe that joining forces might be a great idea. But under a couple of circumstances, he said, rushing to join the group. What conditions? Sabrina asked. I'll handle all the dangerous work, the chubby boy said, puffing up his chest like a tough guy. The children looked at one another and fought off a laugh. Fine, Sabrina said. I think you should have a look in the tunnels right away. I agree, but there's a problem, Wendell said, wiping his nose again. They changed the locks on the boiler room door. Sabrina reached into her backpack and tossed the boy an eat-me cake and a drink-me juice. What are these? He asked. The key to the new lock. You want to do it now? Delphine cried. Miss White will notice I'm gone and come looking for me. We'll worry about that later, said her sister. Lunchtime is too busy, and the bad guys will probably be watching after school. We'll wait until the bell rings for class, and once the halls are empty, we'll get started. Soon enough, the bell rang, and the kids filed into their classes. Sabrina, Delphine, Puck, and Wendell milled around, trying to appear as if they were on their way to class without actually going there. Once they were alone in the hall, the children took out their drink-me boxes and inserted the handy straw attached to it. How much do we drink? Delphine asked, nipping at the box. I don't know. I guess until it starts working. Puck took a long slurp, and when he was finished, he opened his mouth and belched. It's fruity, he exclaimed. Suddenly, to a sound like that of a squeaky balloon losing its air, his body shrank to half its size. Even his clothes, the eat-me cake, and the juice box got tiny. Drink more, Delphine said. You aren't small enough to get under the door. And hurry up, Sabrina said, scanning the hallway. The last thing she wanted was a teacher or students to see this craziness. Puck took another sip and shrank even further. Soon he was no taller than a quarter, standing on its edge. Sabrina bent down and examined the tiny boy. You have no idea how tempted I am to squish you, she said. And you have no idea how big your nose hairs are, he squeaked. Sabrina covered her face with her hands. Our turn, Delphine said. The three other children took long sips out of their boxes, and in no time they were all shrinking too. The liquid did taste fruity, like pineapples and cherry pie at the same time. A cool tingle ran down Sabrina's throat, to her belly, and then to her legs and arms. The sensation wasn't unlike having a good stretch after a wonderful night's sleep. When she finished the box, she was the same size as Puck. Let's get in there before we wind up on the bottom of someone's shoes, said tiny Wendell. He marched over to the door and looked back. I'll go first, in case there's something waiting for us on the other side. He yanked out his hanky, blew hard into it, then shoved it back in his pocket. Then he walked underneath the door without even having to bend over. Delphine took Sabrina's hand, and together they followed Wendell, with Puck bringing up the rear. I should be doing the dangerous stuff, he grumbled. Once the group was on the other side, the children had a chance to look around. A bucket full of mops sat in the corner. A box of trash bags and rolls of paper towel filled a nearby shelf, and an ancient coal furnace rested in the center of the room. Not far off, a brand new electric furnace clicked and popped as it pushed warm air through the vents in the school. But what was bewildering was how gigantic everything was. The mops looked as tall as the Empire State Building in Midtown, New York City. And Sabrina suggested if one of the rolls of toilet paper were to fall off the shelf on them, they'd be crushed to death. "Look at the table," Delphina cried, pointing to a nearby desk. "It's huge." Sabrina nodded in agreement. "Look at the chair. It's huge," Sabrina agreed. "Look at the button," Delphine said, running over to a monstrous white button that had fallen off someone's shirt. She tried to lift it, but it was too heavy for her in her shrunken state. "It's huge." "We need to find you another word," Sabrina muttered. "Hey, I'm 7. I don't know a lot of words," the girl said. "All right, Piggy," Puck said to Wendell. "Where's the entrance to the tunnels?" "We need to eat the cakes and get big," the boy said. "The lever that opens the entrance is in the old furnace." The children reached in their pockets for their eat-me cakes, when suddenly the boiler room door opened. "Someone's coming," Sabrina shouted. The door creaked. The door closed, and a man walked over to the coal furnace. He opened a small trap door on the side and reached in. Sabrina guessed he had pushed the lever because a hum filled the room, and the coal furnace began to slide across the floor. That's when Sabrina noticed it was Principal Hamlin. The principal waited patiently, and when the coal furnace had slid away, he descended a flight of stairs, hiding underneath the machine. The children rushed to the center of the room. "That was your dad," Sabrina said to Wendell. "What is he doing?" He said. "We'll have to follow him," Delphine insisted. "We can't. If we eat the cakes and get big, he's sure to spot us. But at this size, we'd never make it down those steps," her sister argued. No worries, girls. I have a brilliant plan." He spun around on his heels and transformed into an elephant, a tiny elephant. He let out a mighty roar and charged off into the far corner of the room. "Puck, we don't have time for your stupidity," Sabrina shouted after him, but the boy elephant didn't respond. Soon she could hear the scraping of metal on the floor. When Elephant Puck returned, he was pushing a dustpan with a massive handle all the way to the edge of the stairs. When the pan was at the edge of the top stairs, the elephant morphed back into the boy. "Get in," he said, beaming with pride. Sabrina looked at the dustpan hanging precariously over the edge. "No way, we'll kill ourselves on that thing." Delphine was already climbing inside and had found a spot in the center to sit down. "We survived Granny's driving," she said. "We'll survive this." "You'll be fine," Puck assured Sabrina. "You'll probably need someone to feed you for the rest of your life, but you'll make it. Stop being a baby and get in." Sabrina looked at Wendell. Wendell shrugged, and the two of them slid onto the dustpan. "You all need to stay in the back of the thing," Puck said. "Oh, and one more thing." "What?" Sabrina cried. She didn't like the tone of her voice. "Back up, kiddies," he shouted as he walked to the front of the pan and leapt into the air. His body came down hard on the edge of the pan, and the back tilted high in the air, sending the whole thing rocketing down the steps before Sabrina could even scream. Each step cleared just made the dustpan increase speed, until finally they crashed at the bottom of the stairs. After Sabrina checked everyone for broken bones, she punched Puck in the arms. "Hey, I got us here, didn't I? He complained as he rubbed his sore shoulder. The girls climbed out of the dustpan, calmed themselves, and headed down a long, cavernous hall carved out of stone. Along the rocky paths were pickaxes and dusty shovels, old buckets, and miles of rope. Okay, we will continue this in part 12.